everyone, it's Diane with Batik, and today is Fabric Friday. I'm really excited today to share with you another amazing summer top made from our Batik Cotton Jersey Knit and one of my favorite pattern designers, Kenna from Itch to Stitch. And I'm going to step back for just one moment to say this was not going to be my topic for today's Fabric Friday, so we will have to table what I was going to talk about this particular new garment pattern. It's called Algarve, and it is an amazing summer top, as I had mentioned, from Batik Cotton Jersey Knit. Well, that's our Batik Cotton Jersey Knit. Kenna designed this pattern specifically for a knit, a very drapey knit that has about 50% four-way stretch. If you know much about our Batik Cotton Jersey Knit, it does not have 50% stretch. But I live in a world of challenging myself to sew anything from any of our fabrics. And so that's what I did. I just can't not make an Itch to Stitch top or any of her patterns. I love them all. So yesterday morning, I am kind of scrolling through Instagram and then looking at my email, and I see a new pattern launch. And I really, really, really love the top. I'm going to put a picture here up on the screen so that you can see what attracted me to getting this pattern and cutting it out and using one of my fabrics that I'd already had washed up to make this really, really quickly yesterday. Isn't it sweet? And here is the garment that I made yesterday. I had 1 yard of our Batik Cotton Jersey Knit, which is 72 inches wide. I had that already washed up, and I just decided, how hard can this be? This is going to be a great top, and I'm probably going to have a little bit of leftover fabric, which I do. So we're going to do a couple things today. I'm going to introduce my version of this top using our 72 inch wide Batik Cotton Jersey Knit, which only has, I shouldn't say only, which has 20% stretch. So there is a little bit of difference in stretch from her design element to our fabric. I did account for it just a little bit in the sizing for myself, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And then I'm also going to take you through sort of a step-by-step or a little mini tutorial on how the yoke is put together and how it's attached to the top of the garment. And it just has simple finishings. So we won't go into a lot of the simple finishings, but I'm going to take you through some of the information so you can kind of see how simple and well designed this pattern is. You'll definitely want to have this, and I can honestly tell you, if I can make this in a night, still doing everything that we do around here, you can make this for yourself really quickly before it gets really super hot outside for summer. Let's talk a little bit about the features of this top, and I'm going to try and get a little bit closer here so you can see it. The top has a boat neck neckline, which is my favorite. We have a front yoke and a back yoke. The front is accented with all of this gathering, which really gives beautiful fullness to the top. And around the side, you can kind of see that it's just a basic arm opening, straight sides. And then the back here, it's hard to see with this fabric, but there's a back yoke. And again, the same really beautiful curve to the attached main back piece. The garment measures about 24 inches or so. It's a little shorter than I normally wear, but the fullness of the top really makes that look super beautiful. And I think regardless of whether or not you're wearing jeans or shorts or capris or whatever you put with this top, it's going to look absolutely gorgeous. As I mentioned, the garment is designed for a knit, and there are 22 different sizes in this garment pattern, starting with a 00 with a bust of 31 1/8 to a size 40 with a bust of 69. And I'm focusing on the bust simply because I think with this top and with this style of top, that's the main measurement that will drive the rest of your garment. I always look at my hip measurement, because to me, when it comes to gathering like this, my middle or waist area doesn't really come into play. Yours might be different, but for me, I really don't. And then the hip. I take a look at where that garment is going to fall on my hip. And since this is a little bit shorter of a top, I don't need as much fullness around my hip area. So I just kind of let this one go. So I am basing my sizing on my bust measurement only. And so I started with a size 10. And I think it was the perfect size, even for our fabric, which only has 20% stretch. In addition to the knit fabric, we also need interfacing. The front and back yoke pieces do require interfacing on the side that is inside the garment. And then we're going to use a little strip of interfacing on the front and back yoke that are on the top or the right side of the garment, just to keep everything in place and give it a little bit extra stability. I'm going to take you through a little bit of a tutorial on putting this garment together so you can see how simple it truly is. I'm going to use both my sewing machine and my serger. It's funny because most of the time when I'm working with knit, I think of serging everything to make it really, really super fast. But with this garment, you're going to see that when we stitch the yoke pieces together, when we're doing our gathering stitches, we need a longer stitch. I just jump over to the sewing machine and I'm using that a lot. When I'm attaching the main portion of the garment to the yoke, and then finishing my side seams, and then also finishing the edges of the hem and the arm openings, I'm using my serger. So use whatever you have at your fingertips, whether it be a zigzag stitch to finish it, whether it be a cover stitch, whatever it happens to be, use the tools that you have. Her pattern calls for 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, so be really careful when you're snipping all of the notches and matching indicators. We want to make sure that you don't snip too far in. You could either not snip and use a fabric pencil if you wanted to, or you can always use that technique of cutting out the notch and using that as your matching point here, because none of these steps require us to finish our fabric edges before we sew a seam. And so that would actually be another option for you if you're worried about snipping too far into your fabric. The hems are all 3/4 of an inch. And I actually made mine about 1/2 inch instead of 3/4 of an inch, but do whatever feels comfortable for you. Let's go stitch up our Algarve top. I've already cut out the front of the garment on the fold, the back of the garment on a fold, and then we have 2 more pieces, and this is the yoke. This is the back yoke piece and the front yoke. Each one of these requires 2 pieces as well as interfacing. I used knit tricot interfacing, fusible interfacing for one of the back pieces. And this one, the one that is interfaced, is the shorter of the 2. You will see on each one of the pattern pieces, really look at this closely, but there is the front facing cut all the way to the end, and then about 3/4 of an inch in is where we're supposed to stop cutting the back interfacing. So we have 2 pieces that are the back yoke, both the right side and the wrong side of our garment. Same thing for the front yoke as well, where the shorter of the 2 pieces here cut for the front facing, this one is interfaced with our tricot, and then the longer of the 2, which is going to be the outside or the right side of our garment, we've fused our stay tape. I just simply use the tricot and put that along the very top edge of our neckline. Make sure that you've fused your stay tape or interfacing, whichever you use, so that it covers the 3/8 inch seam allowance as well. Our first step is to sew our front and back yoke pieces together right along the shoulders. And in the pattern, on the pattern piece itself, there is a dot. That dot is very important. It becomes a pivot point. So we're going to line up our front and back yokes, the ones that are interfaced completely. We'll do those first. Match up that small dot, and using pins, we're going to take this over to our sewing machine, starting right at that dot, stitching our seam allowance to the end of the sleeve. We're going to do that step for both the interfaced facings. Get that over there. As well as the other facing. We might as well do both steps at the same time. I've stitched the shoulder seams and gone over to the pressing station and pressed each one of these seams open. Now what we want to do is trim this down just a little bit. It'll reduce any of the bulk inside our shoulders once we have our facings put together. So I'm just going to finish trimming each one of these seams, and then we're going to come back here and sew our yoke pieces together. Next, we're going to stitch our two yoke pieces together with right sides touching each other. Match our center notches and our side seams and stitch 3/8 of an inch all the way around. I always like to make sure that everything is lined up really, really well, and it is. So now what we need to do is understitch, and we're going to pull that seam over to the interfaced side of the yoke, and then from the right side, understitch about 1/8 of an inch away from that center seam. Now the pattern instructs us to start 1 inch away from each of the shoulder seams, and that'll allow us to turn this very nicely. So we're going to start 1 inch in and finish 1 inch away from the other shoulder seam. Next, we want to trim off any excess really close to the understitching. We've trimmed up our seam allowance, and now we need to press our facing with right sides out. And then we're going to come back over here and add a basting stitch to keep the other edge together before we attach our front and back pieces. I pressed the yoke flat and have matched up the open ends and pinned them in place where we have our single notches, our centers, and also I've lined up the seams so that everything matches on the shoulder area as well. Next, we're going to take and baste all the way, a basting stitch all the way along the open ends, just to secure them so that it will make it super easy to add the front piece and the back piece when we get to those steps. So I'm just going to do a quick little basting stitch all the way along each one of these edges. I brought the front pattern piece over to the sewing machine at the same time as finishing off the edge of the yoke, because next what we need to do is run 2 gathering stitches along the top edge, the yoke edge of our front pattern piece. So from the outside notch to the other notch on the other sleeve opening, we're going to stitch 2 lines, and I have this set at a wide basting stitch, a gathering stitch. And I start one about, I don't know, about 1/4 of an inch or so away from the edge. And then we're going to run a second basting stitch next to that one. Now it's time to make our gathers, but what I like to do first, I think we each have our own different method, but I like to pin the yoke in place in 3 spots: the center, and getting our threads out of the way here, the side notch right there, and the other side notch. This way I know exactly how much gathering I need to do. I'm probably going to still adjust my pins as I go here, just to make sure that I can get a pretty even gather. And then we'll take and pin the sides, which are flat, over to the arm opening. This takes a little bit of time to do. Gather up the fabric, just moving your fabric across the threads so that everything stays really even. Until the gathered portion fits the straight portion of the yoke. The yoke is now pinned to the gathering, area here on the front of the garment, and I'm going to actually sew along this edge and then take it over to my serger to finish off the edge. Go slow because we have a lot of pins. I had considered actually hand basting this in place, but I decided that the pins are here, we're gonna go slow, and then I'll take it over to the serger and finish it off really nicely. This looks really, really good. I always worry that I'm not going to get this as even as it should be, but this looks really, really good. I am going to have to go back and remove one layer of the gathering threads, and that'll be easy to pull out. But now I'm going to take this over to my serger, serge along the entire edge, and then we'll come back and we'll attach the back as well to the back yoke, but I'm going to stay over at the serger and do that in one full swoop. Here's where we are with the garment. I finished serging the edge of the front yoke to the front gathered portion of the garment. And then while sitting at the serger, I attached the back piece to the back yoke and then pressed the yoke towards the garment here. And then I thought I might as well finish the edge of the arm opening at the serger. And so I did that for both sides. This is a step I didn't do the first time I made this garment. The first time what I did is with right sides together, sewed up the side seam through the arm opening, and then I serged all the way around the circle. It is a lot easier to do your serging before your side seams are sewn. So take that into consideration, okay? But we only have a couple steps left, and I'm just gonna go finish this garment because as you can see, we are almost done. So I'm going to take and pin my side seams together, serge those, and then I'm going to serge all the way around the hem, finishing the edge of the hem, and then we'll come back and hem. I have a pin still sitting here, making sure that the center seam of my shoulder on the yoke front and back are in the exact spot they're supposed to be. I'll take that out once I flip this back and top stitch all the way around the opening to the sleeve. And then we're done. So I'm gonna go finish those basic steps, and then we're gonna try this on and see how this one looks. How fun is this project? I really love how this turned out. The boat neck neckline is my favorite. The yoke is really sturdy with that interfacing. I think it is just gorgeous. And then all the gathers give it this really, really fluid and loose feel to it. And the back is a simple back yoke that's flat with the backing fabric. And the sleeve opening is actually, it's not too tight and it's not too loose. You don't have any issues about the opening size at all. And I think this is kind of the right length of sleeve, the integrated sleeve here, to be able to wear a cardigan or a jacket if the evening or day for some reason is really cool this summer. So you can do a lot of things with this garment. Let's summarize this just a little bit. This is the Algarve pattern by Itch to Stitch, and it's a new pattern that she launched yesterday. On our website, we will have not a traditional garment kit, because our garment kits are fabric, notions, and the option of adding on a pattern. This is fabric, notions, meaning a yard of interfacing, and you have a link in our website for this item to go directly to Kenna's website to purchase her pattern. She makes her patterns only available as a download from her website. But we're an affiliate with her, so we hope that you click our link, jump over there, get the pattern, and over the next, I think it's 6 to 7 days since she launched it yesterday, you'll have the option of getting it as a discountable pattern. So it's 20% off as part of her launch. And take a look at some of her other patterns if Itch to Stitch is new to you, or if there are a few patterns that you have kind of had your eye on. The more you buy, the more you save on her website. And it is just a really, really great way to add wonderful patterns to your pattern collection and future garment sewing ideas that you might have. Now, with our garment kit, you have the choice of any of our jersey knit fabrics, not just the ones that we kind of pre-set up as some of our favorites. As you can see, I happen to always have pre-washed blue fabrics on our website. This happens to be the hand-dyed Lake. This is the shade of Lake. I'm wearing Phoenix in the colorway of Navy Jewel. Now this fabric was one of our samples, and it had a little bit of misprinting on it, and that's why I had it pre-washed, because I like to use them as my muslins whenever there is a blemish on something. And so that is the fabric that I used here for this top. But I love how it turned out, and I don't actually see it any really obvious blemishes, so I'm going to wear it. I think it's great. But again, you can select any fabric of your choice. We'll include the interfacing, and then definitely jump over to Kenna's site to get the pattern. Whew. This was my quick little Thursday, Friday, get prepped to do another project for you. It happens to be in the garment world. That wasn't what I was going to do this today on this Friday, but we'll get there next week. Definitely follow us on our social media. Sign up, get on our Facebook group. We started a Sew Batik Facebook group, and I really want to encourage you to join that group so that we can communicate more, share some information, share some images, some projects, answer questions. I think it would be fabulous. So definitely do that, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hopefully you like this video. But I love your comments. I'm getting more and more comments and questions, and it's only making every one of our videos and making us a lot better. So thank you for that. Without any further ado, let's enjoy our Friday and have an absolutely fabulous Mother's Day weekend. So keep sewing, smiling, and sharing.